Hello everyone, welcome to June Lead Coding Challenge playlist. Today is week 3, problem number 5, longest duplicate substring. So the problem statement here is quite simple, that you are given a string S and you have to consider all the duplicated substrings present in this string S, and you have to return any duplicated substring which has the longest possible length. For example, if you see the word here banana, so this word banana here contains this substring A and A here, as well as A and A here. So that means that the substring A and A is a substring which gets repeated, and that's why we return A and A. There are other strings also, which is for example, if you consider this NA as a substring, so this NA repeats as well, but we are only interested in the longest possible length which repeats. Okay, so that's what the problem statement is. So the problem statement might look very easy, but the actual implementation of this particular problem is not so trivial, because one of the main reason is that the concepts that you need to know, the amount of information that you need to know in order to implement the solution for this, that's actually a lot. And not just that, you also have to apply a lot of hacks, because the workaround for this problem actually goes through hashing. And whenever you have to deal with things in which concepts like hashing are present, you have to apply a lot of hacks in order to get the solution accepted. So we'll see what all we need to know in order to solve this particular problem, and let's just jump to the explanation part. So consider a string which is A, B, A, A, C, A, B, A, C, and so on. Okay, so this string is of length 11. So we have the indices from 0 to 10. Okay, now if you have to find the longest possible substring in this particular given string, what are we going to do, and what kind of algorithm and approach we need to take is what we'll be seeing now. Okay, so consider this section from 1 to 4, from index 1 to 4, which is BAAC. Now, does this section BAAC repeats? So we can say that yes, this section BAAC repeats, and if we notice, the section from this index 1 to 4 and the section from this index 6 to 9 is both BAAC. So BAAC of length 4 repeats. Okay, now if this section of length 4 repeats, what can we say about the section of length 3, length 2 and length 1? So if I know that there is a substring of length 4 which repeats, well, if I only consider say BAA, that is a substring of length 3 inside this substring of length 4, right? Definitely if BAC whole repeats, then BAA will repeat as well. In fact, this BA of length 2 will repeat as well, and only this single length substring which is B will repeat as well, right? So what can I say about the smaller lengths? Well, I can say that if a substring of length 4 repeats, then definitely substring of length 3, 2 and 1 will repeat as well. Okay, so we'll definitely find length 3, length 2 and length 1 substrings repeated as well. Okay, so that's one useful information that we'll be using. And what is the conclusion that you can derive from this? So the conclusion is, if a section of length L repeats, then definitely the section of length which is smaller than L repeats as well. That is the conclusion that we'll derive from here. Okay, now how we can use this information is something that we'll be seeing later. Okay, now if you have to observe this whole string, what is the maximum length string that repeats? So well, the string is ABAACA, which is of length 6, and it repeats. Why? Because here from 0 to 5 you have ABAACA, and again from this index 5 to 10 you again have this string ABAACA. Okay, so we can say that this substring of length 6 repeats in the given string S. Okay, so what can we say about all the other lengths? So if you notice here, this substring of length 6 is the maximum length substring that repeats, and any length substring after this does not repeat. And just before we have seen a conclusion that if a substring of length L repeats, all the substrings of length smaller than L repeats as well. Okay, so what I'll be doing is I'll be marking a 1 corresponding to whether the length of a particular given length substring in this given string repeats or not. So whether a 0 length substring repeats or not, well, by definition a 0 length substring always repeats, because if you are not able to find any repetition, that means that you have a 0 length substring repetition. Okay, does a substring of length 1 repeats? Again, if we have this substring of length 6 which repeats, then definitely substring of length 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 all will repeat, right? So that's what I'll be doing. So substring of length 1 repeats, 2 repeats, 3 repeats, 4 repeats, 5 repeats and 6 repeats as well. Okay, so I'll be marking a 1. Why? Because all these lengths substring in this given string S repeats. But since 6 is the longest possible length, so after that a substring of length 7, 8, 9 and 10, these are not going to repeat. So I'll be just marking a 0 here. Okay, so if you are familiar with binary search, this is a standard array in which you can apply binary search. Why? Because this is a monotonically decreasing array, and whenever you have monotonicity, you can actually apply binary search there. Okay, if you're not familiar with binary search, I'll put the link to the binary search tutorial in the description of the video. So go check out that video, and hopefully you'll be able to get a good grip over binary search after watching that video as well. So binary search is really a tricky concept and sometimes very tricky to implement. So that video not just explains the binary search, but also tells you how you can quickly and neatly implement a binary search implementation as well. Okay, so go check out that video. Now, once we have this information, what we can do is we can actually apply binary search on the length of the substring that repeats. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we'll be apply binary search on the lengths. For example, I'll consider this index 4 here. Now, if the substring of length 4 repeats, then I know that I need to look on the right side, which is maybe I need to look on the right side which is greater than 4. So maybe a string of length 5 might repeat, or maybe a string of length 6 might repeat. I don't know, I'll have to check that. But definitely all the substrings of length 3, 2, 1, 0, they will repeat. Why? Because a substring of length 4 will repeat. Okay, so this is the standard questions where you can just apply binary search and you can find the answer. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we'll be applying binary search, and we'll be applying binary search on the length of the repeated string, on the length of the substring that gets repeated. Okay, but we are not just stuck. We like, that's just one thing that we have come up with. How are we going to apply the binary search is again second thing. So the way we'll be applying binary search is consider a length L as 6. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to consider all the strings of length 6 that are present in this string, right? So from you can have from 0 to 5, that's a string of length 6. You can have 1 to 6, that's again a string of length 6. You can have 2 to 7, that's again a string of length 6, and so on till 5 to 10, that's again a string of length 6, substring of length 6. Okay, so you'll have to have a sliding window in which you'll be considering all the substrings of a given length, and you'll be applying binary search, and you'll be checking whether all these strings repeats or not. Don't worry if things are not making complete sense as of now. So as we'll proceed in the video, as I'll explain more about the next algorithm that we'll be dealing with, you'll understand it in a much better way. Okay, so first thing is to actually use sliding window so that we can actually consider all the substrings of a given length L for which we are applying the binary search. Second thing is that we cannot actually store all these substrings in a set or a map. The reason is, well, if you have string of length n, what if I consider a substring of length n by 2? So I'll be having n by 2 substrings of length n by 2, right? And if I multiply that, the amount of time that I'll have to have in order to consider all the possible substrings of length n by 2, well, that's going to be roughly O of n squared. Okay, and the way the question is designed is n is actually less than or equal to 10 to the power 5. So n squared is going to be 10 to the power 10, and you are going to have memory limit exceed or time limit exceed and so on in this thing. Okay, so you cannot actually store all the complete strings, and you cannot simply just look up in a set or a map whether a given string is repeating or not. Okay, so we cannot do that. So that's why what we'll be doing is we'll be having a look at an algorithm which is a really famous algorithm when it comes to string hashing, which is Rabin-Karp hashing. Okay, so what we do in Rabin-Karp hashing is, if you have to calculate or compute a hash from index I to j in this given string, so this is how you will be computing the hash of the string. Okay, don't worry if you are not familiar with Rabin-Karp hashing. This is a very simple hashing technique which says that suppose if you have to compute the hash of BAAC. Okay, so what you'll be doing is you'll be considering only this much section, and you'll be multiplying the first occurrence, the first character with p to the power 0, where p is a prime, the second one with p to the power 1, and so on. That's what you'll be doing, and that's what the formula also suggests you. The formula says that if you have to compute the hash of a substring from index I to j, what you'll be doing is you'll be taking p to the power 0, and you'll be multiplying that p to the power 0 with the first character, which is the ith character. Then you'll be taking p to the power 1, and then you'll be multiplying that with the second character, which is the I plus 1th character, and so on. You'll keep repeating that. Okay, so we'll just see an example of how you can compute the hash of the segment from 5 to 10. Okay, so this is our segment from 5 to 10, and we'll be seeing what exactly are we going to obtain the hash as. Okay, so the first step is to actually consider this first character, which is a, and we have this prime number p, the power of which keeps raising every time we move ahead. Okay, so what will happen as the first step is we'll consider this character a and we'll multiply that with p raised to the power 0. So the first term in our hash is going to be a times p raised to the power 0. The second term corresponds to the second character, which is b, and the second term is going to be b times p raised to the power 1. And we'll just keep doing that. So you see, every time we have these characters a, b, a, c, a, and so on, and we multiply all these characters value with p raised to the power 0, p raised to the power 1, p raised to the power 2, and so on. Okay. Notice that, of course, these are the numbers. These are not the actual characters a, b, a, c. So what you can maybe do is you can consider the ASCII value of a, ASCII value of b, ASCII value of c, and so on. Or what you can do is maybe you can consider, since all the characters are lowercase characters, so for a you can just consider the number 0 because that's the 0th character in the alphabet. For b you can just consider the character number 1. For c you can just consider the number 2, and so on. Okay, so you can just map these characters to the numbers, corresponding numbers, because of course the hash is going to be a numeric value and it doesn't make sense to multiply a character with the number. Okay, cool. So the next number we have here is present at index 7, which is a again, and the term corresponding to this is going to be a times p raised to the power 2. The next character we have here is again a, and the term going to be is a times p raised to the power 3, and so on. So for c it's going to be a, c times p raised to the power 4, and for this a it's going to be a times p raised to the power 5. So that is what the hash of the substring which is from this index 5 to 10 is. Okay, so this whole quantity that you see here is nothing but the hash that we have computed using Rabin-Karp hashing formula. Okay, so this is something that we'll be doing next. So consider the length 6, and what we'll be doing is, so we'll be applying a sliding window of length 6. That is why, because we have to consider all the substrings of length 6, and for each of the substring what we'll be doing is we'll be calculating the hash, and we'll be storing the hash that we have computed for each of the substring, and we'll see what interesting thing happens, what interesting phenomena happens, and how we will be able to detect a repeated substring using just the things that we have learned here, which is a sliding window where we consider all the substrings of given length L, and next is the Rabin-Karp hash that we have just learned here. Okay, so let's consider the section from a to this a, which is from index to 0 to 5. And let's say the hash of this section is h0. So what I'll be doing is I'll be computing the hash with the technique that I've just shown before, and I'll just storing this hash in a set. So I'll be just storing this h0. Okay, next is this section from index 1 to 6, and the hash of this section is say h1. So I'll be storing this hash again in my set h1. Next, consider the section from 2 to 7. This is just the sliding window, and I'm just considering all the substrings of length 6. Okay, so the next section is from 2 to 7, and let's say the hash of this section is h2. So I'll be storing that in my set h2. Next section is from 3 to 8. The hash is going to be h3. I'll be storing the hash h3. Next section is from 4 to 9. The hash is going to be h4. I'll just store h4 in my set. Now, if you notice this section from index 5 to index 10, well, what is the hash of this section going to be? Now, if you notice this section from index 5 to index 10, the hash is going to be what? We have just seen that, which is a times p raised to the power 0, b times p raised to the power 1, a times p raised to the power 2, and so on till a times p raised to the power 5. That's what the hash of this substring from 5 to 10 is going to be. Okay, cool. Now also consider the region from the index 0 to 5. And what is the hash of this index 0 to 5 going to be? Well, that is going to be a times p raised to the power 0 plus b times p1, a times p2, a times p3, and so on till a times p5. And if you notice, these two hashes are exactly the same. Well, of course, the reason being that since these two substrings from index 0 to 5, which is a, b, a, c, a, and other substring from index 5 to 10, which is again a, b, a, c, a, since these two substrings are exactly the same, that is why their hash is also going to be the same. And that is why when I compute the hash of this segment from index 5 to index 10, that's going to be h0, the hash that we already have in our set. And this is the moment where we can actually check whether a given substring repeats or not. So since the hash of this segment from index 5 to 10 is h0, which we already have in our set, that denotes that this segment or this substring actually is repeated. And this is the point where we can say that we have found a repetition. Okay, so again, let's just quickly do the recap. So what all we did here, we first apply binary search on the length L. Okay, and we next consider each substring of length L, and we do that using sliding window technique. On each of the substring we actually apply Rabin-Karp, okay, to calculate the hash of the given substring. Once we have done that, we calculate hash of each length L segment, which is nothing but the sliding window thing. And if there is a point where the hash actually repeats, that simply means that we have found a repetition. We have found a substring which actually repeats, and that actually enables us to find a substring which is actually repeated in this given string S. Okay, so that is all that you need to know in this binary search, Rabin-Karp hashing, and sliding window. That's all you need to know. We'll also see how we can optimize Rabin-Karp hashing using when we are actually applying it in a sliding window manner. So it's not that you always have to iterate on the whole length in order to compute. Say for example, if you have already computed the hash from the segment 0 to 5, you need not completely iterate from the segment of 1 to 6 in order to calculate the hash from the section 1 to 6. You can do some arithmetics, and you can in less than O of L time, which is in less than this whole, in less than the time which actually requires which is required to iterate from index 1 to 6, you can actually obtain the hash in less than that time. You can apply some arithmetics, is what we'll be seeing next. That's the advantage that you get when you are applying Rabin-Karp on using sliding window technique. That's also called rolling hash. That's also a very quite famous term. I really suggest you to watch some videos or go through some resources on Rabin-Karp hashing, and there are some other hash there as well, so that you are actually comfortable with these terms. And these are actually a good thing to learn whenever you have to do any string manipulation questions, or whenever you see any competitive coding question based on strings or something. These kind of techniques are really very useful. Okay, but there are some problems that you face with these kind of techniques. Okay, the problem being, well, first thing that we need to notice here is this hash that we are computing, that hash can actually become very large. The value of this hash, the numeric value of this hash can become very large. So you might have a point where suppose if the length of the substring is say 1000, so this quantity here, if you see, that is going to be p raised to the power 1000. Now if p is a prime number, which is usually a prime number which is more than the size of your vocabulary. In our case, we have total of 26 letters. So let's say p is 29. Okay, now 29 raised to the power 1000 is something that you can not store in an integer. Okay, so that's a problem. And what we do to get rid of this is we actually take modulo. Okay, we actually take modulo of the quantities that we are computing, so that it remains under a particular quantity, say mod. Okay, suppose if we are taking modulo with a number mod, so we are able to keep this numerical hash value under this quantity mod. Okay, so there are some limitations that you actually encounter when you implement the Rabin-Karp. The first limitation is that how do you actually select p and mod? How do you actually select the prime that we are using, which is this prime here, and the number with which we'll be taking the modulo? How do you select that? And this is actually a very big problem. The reason being that you might find some pair of p and mod for which your solution might get accepted, but for some other pairs your solution might not get accepted. The reason being hash collisions, because each different pairs of p and mod is going to give you a different hash of the strings that you will obtain, and each of them is differently prone to collisions as well. Okay, so actually coming up with a good pair of p and mod is a challenge, and we'll see what we can do in order to avoid this thing. Of course, this is something that can never be avoided. You can always design a test case for which there will be some hash collision, but we'll try to use some techniques with which we can minimize these hash collisions, and we'll be seeing that while we'll be jumping to the code section. Okay, next thing is that taking modulo is a very expensive task. So taking modulo in C, C++, Java, you just have to use that modulo sign and you are done with that. But when you have to take modulo repeated times, then actually that becomes a very expensive task. That is a computationally heavy task. And in Rabin-Karp, you have to actually take repetitive mods, and that actually is a heavy task, and that actually can give TLEs as well, which is time limit exceed as well. Okay, so we'll see what we can do in order to get rid of this thing. Well, the solution that I'll be showing you here is something that in which you will not have to take mod at all. So when I actually first came to know about this solution, I was completely mind blown that there exists a solution where you are using the Rabin-Karp technique, but you don't have to take any modulo. But the reason for that, the main reason for that actually revolves around the way numbers are stored in your computer. Okay, so we'll see how we can implement Rabin-Karp without even using the modulo operator. So that will actually give us a really good runtime, and we won't have to worry about taking modulo, which is an expensive thing. Okay, next thing is that overhead of modulo inverse. So if you actually implement a naive Rabin-Karp algorithm, and when you have to calculate, so remember that we were calculating the Rabin-Karp, we were calculating the hash of each of the substring that we had in our string, right? So for example, the substring that we had was this A, B, A, C, and I'm considering, say, substring of length 3, which is ABA. Now if I have to move from this ABA to this BAA, what I can do? So first consider the hash of ABA. That's going to be A times P raised to the power 0 plus B times P raised to the power 1 plus A times P raised to the power 2. Okay, and what is going to be the hash of BAA? Well, that is going to be B times P raised to the power 0 plus A times P raised to the power 1 plus A times P raised to the power 2. Okay, cool. If I have to actually adjust the hash of this ABA in order to obtain this hash here, what I can do is I can subtract the hash corresponding to this first term, which is I can just delete this part. Okay, and the remaining part here, if you see, you have to actually divide by P. So once you divide by P, what you obtain is B times P raised to the power 0 plus A times P raised to the power 1. And once you have that, just consider the last character here in the new string BAA, and corresponding to that, add the term which is A times P raised to the power 2. Okay, because this is of length 3, so the last prime power is going to be 2. So we just add this thing, and if you notice, this and this are same, right? So this is the arithmetic that you can apply when you have to actually calculate the hash of the immediate next window. Okay, you can just subtract the term corresponding to the first character, and you can just divide the remaining terms with P, and you can just add the term corresponding to the last character. And using this arithmetic, you can just actually in O of log n, actually, because dividing this thing is not trivial, and I'll tell you why. In O of log n, you can actually just directly obtain the hash of the next substring. Okay, but there is a problem here. The problem here is, since these operations are under the modulo field, so you are always taking mod with some quantity, right? So you cannot just simply divide by any number. You cannot just perform a naive division. Okay, so the reason being, for example, if I'm doing 4 times 4, and if I'm taking, say, modulo 5, okay, if I'm operating in a modulo 5 field, so what is 4 times 4 going to give me? 16 mod 5, and 16 mod 5 is going to be 1, right? If I tell you to divide this thing by 2, well, I cannot divide this 1 by 2 first of all, right? But I can actually divide this 4 times 4 by 2, and that's a valid thing, because 4 times 4 by 2 is going to be 8, and 8 mod 5 is going to be 3. But if I look at this final result here, I cannot divide this final result by 2 and obtain 3. So what new concept that you have to learn here is to actually calculate the modulo inverse. Okay, and there is this overhead of modulo inverse if you implement a naive Rabin-Karp algorithm. So what we'll be doing is we'll be modify the Rabin-Karp algorithm that we have just seen, and we'll be implementing a slightly different version of it, which actually enables you to get rid of this modulo inverse operation as well. Okay, so I personally was stuck many a times to implement this modulo inverse thing, because I have to then implement fast exponentiation and then modulo inverse and then incorporate all the other things as well, which is actually time taking also, and that's an overhead as well, right? So we'll be seeing an approach in which you don't have to take this modulo inverse, still you can compute the Rabin-Karp hash of the subsequent substrings that you have. Okay, so that's one more problem with the Rabin-Karp that we have if you use a naive Rabin-Karp. Okay, the next problem is in order to actually avoid the hash collisions, you sometimes have to use 2 prime numbers or 2 modulo as well. So remember the P that we were using, or the mod with which we were taking the modulo. What people do many times is they just don't use 1 pair of P and mod, but they use 2 pairs of P and mod, so that to avoid the collision. Okay, because if there is a collision with, say, 1 pair of P and mod, there might not be the collision with the other pair of P and mod, and you can detect whether that's a collision or not. So that's one more overhead, and this is usually a time taking thing, because it actually almost doubles the time of your Rabin-Karp algorithm. Okay, so we'll be solving all these problems in this video in the coding section that we'll be seeing, and hopefully that will be really useful for you. So the next time you see any Rabin-Karp question, any string manipulation question, you can use these techniques and you can get the workaround. Okay, there are some other approaches that so you can go to the discuss section of the LeetCode also. There might be several videos also that people have posted in which they are using try. But let me tell you, when you use a try approach, that's going to give you a TLE. Okay, if you want the explanation of this, I can put it in the comment section. The try question is something that is getting accepted on LeetCode. Sadly, it's because of the weaker test cases that they have there for this particular problem. So that's why the questions related to try are getting accepted there. But the complexity that is there with try is, in the worst case, it can be O of n squared. Okay. Of course, with the naive try is what I'm saying about. If you use some other tries, so there are implementations such as suffix tree, suffix try. If you use those things, then of course you can get the solution accepted. But with the naive try, many people are trying this thing with the naive try, and that's going to be O of n squared solution. So this is something that we'll not see because it's getting accepted only because the test cases on LeetCode are weak. Okay, so let's just jump to the code section. And what I'll be doing first is I'll be demonstrating you 4 to 5 approaches that I have already done, which either gives the wrong answer or time limit exceeds based on the things that we have seen here. Okay, based on all these limitations that we have seen here. Okay, so the first approach is, so this is a naive Rabin-Karp algorithm that I have implemented. Don't worry, we'll actually implement the whole code once again. So this is just the code that I've already written. And what I want to show here is I have this one pair of mod and p, and I'm trying to implement the Rabin-Karp algorithm, and I'm trying to do all those things here with just one pair of mod and p. And let's just try to not run this code. I actually had to submit this code, but okay, then I'll have to wait now. And let's just try to submit this code and let's just see what happens when I use this one pair of mod and p and I use the Rabin-Karp hashing algorithm. Okay, so it says it's a wrong answer, and it's not wrong answer because I implemented it wrong. Of course, you can trust me on that if I'm making a video on it. But it's a wrong answer because this is a hash collision that we have encountered. So this is a very big string if you see here. And this program, what it's saying is that this is the output that gets repeated. And you can clearly see that this is nowhere close to the expected output. What's the reason for that? Well, the reason for that is the hash of this particular thing actually collides with the hash of some other quantity as well. So that is why the program is giving this as the output. And the reason is hash collision. Okay, so what people do most of the time is they actually take two modulo and prime pairs. So I have done that as well, and I'll show you that implementation as well. So here I have taken two modulo pairs. You can try several stuffs. So you can have one modulo 2 primes, two modulo 2 primes, and so on. So what I've done is I've taken two modulo here and one prime, and I'll be doing the same thing here as well. So let's just try to submit the code. And so the reason for taking two modulos is it actually prevents the hash collision that you have. But once I do that, my program actually takes a lot of time and it's a time limit exceed. Okay, so if you just see here, so this is the test case in which I got a time limit exceed when I actually took this two modulo. Okay, I've even done some other implementations as well, and I've done this one implementation where I've optimized some of the things. Still, what you can see is all the test cases are passing. 16 out of 16 test cases are passing, but it's taking too long. Okay, so it's again giving me a time limit exceed. So even though the algorithm is completely correct, it's giving the right answer. But since I've using this two modulos and two prime pairs, so that's why it's taking a lot of time. Okay, so this is the implementation that I've done. And let me tell you one more thing. It's not that it will always give you TLE. Sometimes it might get accepted as well. So as you see here, this particular problem got accepted. Let me just submit it once again. And the reason why sometimes it gets accepted, sometimes it's a time limit exceed, is mainly because of the server load. So it might happen that sometimes there is a heavy load on the server, and if you are trying to run a particular algorithm, it might take a bit longer time to execute. And sometimes there might be a less load on the server also, and it might execute very quickly. Okay, so as you can see now, this is the same code that gave me a TLE, though it passed all the test cases, but it took so long. So that's why it gave me a TLE. And if I just copy paste this code, so let me just copy this code and paste it here again so that I can show you what's the problem with this thing. And if I just submit this now, it might give me accepted. As you have seen, it just gave me accepted, right? Okay, so that's an accepted. And if we go to the more details part, you'll realize that the time it's taking is really too much. It's almost like 3 seconds here, and all the test cases are passing. Okay, so these are some of the problems that we have when we actually use ribbon carp, and these are very common problems that people face. So hopefully this video is a bit long enough, I know, but then there are several problems that people keep facing when they are using ribbon carp, and hopefully this video will solve all your queries. Next, what I'll be doing is I'll be jumping to the code section, and we'll be seeing how we can use and what kind of ribbon carp technique we can apply, so that this selection of P and mod also makes sense. We don't even have to take modulo. That's a really fantastic thing. So if you are able to if you know that technique, then you can actually save a lot in terms of time limit. Okay, so I'll be showing you a technique in which you don't have to take modulo at all. So first, when I actually came to know about this technique, I was completely mind blown. I couldn't believe that this actually works. But when I actually saw that how the numbers are stored in the memory, how the numbers are stored in the computer architecture, it's something based on that. So we'll be seeing how we can implement this thing without even taking the modulo part, which actually gives us a really good improvement over a naive modular technique. And then we'll also get rid of this modulo inverse thing that we have just seen, so that whenever you have to calculate the hash of the subsequent or the sliding windows that we had, so you won't have to deal with the modulo inverse part also. Okay, so without further ado, let's just jump to the code section, and we'll see how we'll be implementing the solution of this particular problem. Okay, so what I've done here is I've written down the steps for you, so you can just follow these steps and you can try to implement the code on your own. What I'll be demonstrating you next is how, first thing, you can modify the ribbon carp algorithm in order to handle that modular division thing. Second thing, how do you actually implement a solution where you don't have to take any modulo. Okay, so for that, let's again consider the string that we had before, and let's try to see what a naive ribbon carp algorithm looks like. Okay, so for example, if we have to compute the hash of this section, which is a, b, a. Now, how do you compute the hash of this section? This is what we did before: a times p raised to the power 0, b times p raised to the power 1, and so on. Okay, and this is what our old algorithm or old implementation was. Okay, next what we'll be doing is the way that we'll be modifying this is, instead of the increasing power of these primes, we'll be considering the decreasing power of the primes. Okay, so since this is a length of 4, this is a section of length 4, so what I'll be doing is I'll be starting with p raised to the power 3. That's what is the modification that I'll be making. Okay, so what it's going to look like is I'll be having this a times p raised to the power 3, then this b times p raised to the power 2, then this a times p raised to the power 1, and this a times p raised to the power 0. And this is the new implementation that we'll be having. Okay, so if you have to compute this thing, what you can simply do is you can start iterating from here, and you can consider each character one by one, and you can keep multiplying this p again and again. So if you add up all these things, so this is what it will look like. Of course, there is some other implementation as well, but I'll just keep it simple for you, and we'll be just iterating in the backwards fashion, and we'll be obtaining this hash, which is the new hash. Okay, now what is the advantage that we get here when we have this kind of hash? The advantage is you don't need repetitions you don't need divisions anymore, and the reason for that is something like this. So for example, consider you have to obtain the hash of the next substring, which is BAAC. Now, how can you obtain the hash of this next substring BAAC? Since this is a sliding window going on, so of course I would like to make some modifications to the string, some modifications to the hash that I had before, and I want to obtain the hash of BAAC. What I can do here is, so consider this section only. Okay, this new hash that we have. What modifications need to be done here so that I can obtain the hash of BAAC? First thing I can do is I can multiply this whole thing by p. So that's not a problem at all. We can just take the prime and we can just multiply the current hash that we have. Okay, next thing that we'll be doing is, since we multiply this whole thing by p, so we'll be obtaining something like this: a times p raised to the power 4 plus b times p raised to the power 3 plus a times p raised to the power 2 and a times p raised to the power 1. Okay, now clearly you can see that this a times p raised to the power 4 is something that we need to get rid of, right? Because this a times p raised to the power 4 doesn't appear in this BAAC hash. Instead, the first term that appears is going to be b times p raised to the power 3. So corresponding to this b, we already have this b times p raised to the power 3. Corresponding to these two a's, we already have this a p raised to the power 2 and a p raised to the power 1. What else do we need? So the next thing that we'll need is, of course, corresponding to this term c. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be first getting rid of this thing. So what I'll be doing is I'll be just subtracting this a times p raised to the power k. So the k in our case, as you can see, is 4, right? So since k is 4, so that's what I'll be doing. I'll be just subtracting this a times p raised to the power 4, and what I'll be obtaining is something like this. Okay, so this term is something that I'm getting rid of. So I'll just have this b p3, a p2, and a p1. And since I want the hash of this thing, so the last term is nothing but c times p raised to the power 0, because these are appearing in decreasing order, these powers of prime. So I'll just add the value corresponding to this c, which is just c, because that's actually equivalent to c times p raised to the power 0, because p raised to the power 0 is 1. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing, and this is the only modification that we'll make in the Rabin-Karp algorithm that we have seen before. So with that, let's jump to the code section and actually let's implement this thing and get the thing going. Okay, I still haven't told you anything about the modulo thing. I will not tell you till the end of the video. You'll realize what is that magical thing that is supposed to happen with the modulo thing. So we'll just see that towards the end. Okay, so first we'll just declare L and R, and these actually are the indices of the string that we'll be having. Okay, so whatever is the repeated string that we have, we'll be storing the start index and the end index in the variables L and R. Okay, as we have seen before, the first thing that we'll be doing is we'll be applying the binary search on the length L that we have to obtain. So I'll just initialize my low as 0 and up as n, which is the length of the string, and I'll be just applying the binary search, which is while low is less than equal to up. The first thing that you do in binary search is to calculate the mid. So I'll just calculate that, and I have this function OK, which actually tells me whether is there any substring of length mid. Let's say this is k. Okay, so is there any substring of length k which gets repeated in this string s. Okay, so what I'll be doing is I'll be checking if OK of mid comma s returns true. That means that I have found a substring of length mid or of length k which actually repeats in this string s. So what I'll be doing is I'll be making low as mid plus 1, and if I'm not able to find it, so I'll be making up as mid minus 1. Okay, once that thing is done, I'll be checking at the end whether I have found any string or not, because if I found a string, so I'll be just updating my L and R values here in this function. Okay, so if I have not found a string, so I'll just return the empty string because there is no repetition. But if I have found a repeating string, so I'll be just repeating that, I'll be just returning that repeated string, which starts from length L and which is of length R minus L plus 1, because if you have a string from L to R, the length of this string is nothing but R minus L plus 1. Okay, so let's just try to implement the main function of this whole algorithm, which is this OK function. So the prime that we'll be using, the prime that we have, that p raised to the power 0, p raised to the power 1, p raised to the power 2, and so on. So this prime that we have here, the prime that we'll be using is nothing but something which is more than our vocabulary size. So since our vocabulary size is of 26, because they have told that S only consists of lowercase English letters, so I'm using prime which is more than 26, which is 29. Okay, so that's what I'm using the prime as. Next thing is we'll initialize our hash value to 0, and there is this one more thing, multiplication, and this multiplication is nothing but this p raised to the power 0, p raised to the power 1, p raised to the power 2, and p raised to the power 3, and so on. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing. I'll be initializing my hash as 0, because I'll be just accumulating all these values, a times p raised to the power 0, a times p raised to the power 1, and so on in my hash. So I'll just initialize my hash with 0, and this multiplicative term that is there, which is p raised to the power 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, I'll just initialize that with 1. Okay, since I need to store all these hashes in a set, so I'll be using an ordered set. That's usually faster than the normal set that we have in C++, though that is not always the case, because an ordered set is also based on hashing technique. But we'll just use an ordered set here. Okay, and we'll be storing all the hashes of all the substrings of length k that we have here. Okay, next thing that we'll be doing is we'll be just computing the hash of the first k characters, and we have just seen we start computing the hash from the end, from the k minus 1th index. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing. I'll be iterating backwards, which is I'll iterate from k minus 1, I greater than minus 1, and minus minus I. Okay, what I'll be doing is I'll be doing hash equals hash plus. So what is the quantity that's getting added? That's the current character that I have times whatever that multiplicative factor is. So the current character is s of I minus a, so that's what is going to give me the so if it is a, it's going to be 0, if it is b, it's going to be 1, if it is c, it's going to be 2, and so on, times multiplicative factor that I have. Okay, once that is done, what I'll be doing is I'll be doing multiplicative factor equals multiplicative factor times prime. So what does that mean is this mul will be p raised to the power 0 first, because that's 1. Then since I have multiplied prime, so if it's going to be p raised to the power 1, then it's going to be p raised to the power 2, then it's going to be p raised to the power 3. Then again, if I do that one more time, it's going to be p raised to the power 4. So at the end of this loop, since this loop actually executes for k times because I have 12k characters, so this at the end of this loop is going to be prime, whatever prime I have, raised to the power k. Okay, so in our example, if you can see, k is 4. So at the end of this loop, which executes k times, this is going to be p raised to the power k, prime raised to the power k. Okay, so whatever hash I have obtained for the first k characters, I'll be just inserting that hash in my unordered set S. So I'll just insert that hash. Oops, I already have the line there. Okay, so I'll just insert that hash in my unordered set. And next what I'll be doing is I'll be considering all the other substrings of length k, which actually, if you see, starts from the index k, right? So the other, sorry, not starts, ends at the index k, then ends in the index k plus 1, then k plus 2, and so on. Okay, so which is basically I'm considering this substring. After that, I'll be considering this substring. After that, I'll be considering this substring. After that, I'll be considering this substring, and so on. At the end, I'll be considering this substring. Okay, so the ending index of the next subsequent substrings, which I'll be calculating using the sliding window technique, starts from this index k, because that's what the next substring of length k is after this initial substring of from 0 to 3. Okay, so I'll just process all the other substrings that I have. Okay, and I'll just compute the hash smartly. So how did we compute the hash smartly? So if you again see, whatever was the hash before, I just multiply that with the prime. So I'll be doing that. So we'll be having hash equals hash times prime. So whatever is the value of prime that we have here, we'll do that. Next, what we did was, so when I do that, it becomes this, right? And what I need to subtract from this, I need to subtract the initial character times p raised to the power 4. So how can I get the initial character? So if you notice here, since I is k, I can actually get the initial character as s of I minus k. Oops, sorry. Because since I goes from k, so the last character that corresponding to which I need to subtract the term is located at I minus k. That's k steps back. Okay, and I'll be multiplying this number mul that we have, because that is already prime raised to the power k. Okay, so I'll be just multiplying, I'll be just subtracting that thing, and what I'll be obtaining is this much hash, which is there in this orange color, right? I'll be just obtaining this much part. Now what do I need to add to this part? I just need to add the value corresponding to the current character, which is the ith character. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll be just adding the value corresponding to the ith character, which is s of I minus a. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing. Oops, my bad. Yep. So again, I just take that prime, I just take that hash, I just multiply it with the prime. So whatever is that value, oops, let's say that is hash. So what I'll be doing is I'll be just subtracting the this value, and I'll be just adding this value, and that's what is going to give me the final hash. Okay, so I'll just check now if this hash is already present in my set or not. And now if we see, like, our algorithm is almost implemented. So if that hash is already present, that means that's not equal to s dot end. So what I'll be doing is I'll be just storing the indices, the start index. The start index, if you see here, is I minus k plus 1, and the end index is nothing but the current I, whatever we have, and I'll just return a true from here. Okay, if that is not present, so I'll be just inserting the hash in my set, and at the end, if I'm not able to find any repetition, so I'll just return false from here. Okay, now you might have a question that when I'm multiplying with this number, this might definitely overflow, right? And this is where the tricky part comes into picture. What I'll be doing is, instead of using int, first of all, what I'll be using is I'll be just defining int as unsigned long int. Well, what's the reason for this? So the reason for this is, first thing, I'm not using int, I'm using an unsigned long int. And what happens when you actually multiply to unsigned long and it gets overflow? Well, it actually works like a modulo internally. Why? For example, if it crosses the limit, it again starts from the 0. Okay, so for example, let's say the maximum value for unsigned long int is, say, p. Okay, so if you add plus 1 to this, since this is a maximum value already, internally it works like a modulo operator, because it just rolls back, and if you add 1 it will automatically become a 0. Okay, so this is the reason, because this is the reason that since this addition, multiplications, and these things are implemented internally in such a way that you automatically obtain a modulo operation, and since it's happening internally, so it's much more faster than the typical modulo operator that you have. Okay, so this will actually take care of all the problems that we have related to modulo. Okay, so just this one thing, where if I just, instead of having integer, if I just use unsigned long, that's going to make my life easy. Okay, now you might ask, what is the modulo in that particular case? So the answer is, the modulo is 2 raised to the power 63 minus 1. Okay, and why is that so? The reason being, this is the highest value that I can obtain with the long. If I actually have unsigned long, so that will actually be 2 raised to the power 64 minus 1. That's going to be the maximum value of the unsigned long, and that actually becomes my mod. So this is the number with which I am taking the mod, and this is fairly large number. Okay, so what is the advantage of taking such a high number as the modulo operator, as the modulo? Well, since we have really a large number for mod, the hash collisions that we'll be having is also going to be much lesser. Okay, suppose instead of these kind of big numbers for the modulo, suppose if you have, say, 10 to the power 9 plus 7, which is the standard modulo term that that people use in competitive coding also. Well, the hash collisions that you can have at 10 to the power 9 plus 7, which is roughly, if you see, is roughly equivalent to 2 raised to the power 31 or 30, along those things. Okay, so this number is roughly equal to this, versus if you consider 2 raised to the power 63, well, this number is really large as compared to 2 raised to the power 30. And if you are taking modulo with this, the numbers will be spread out in a much larger section, and if that is the case, that actually gives you a lesser collision also. Okay, if you still need more input on this thing, let me know in the comment section, and I'll give you the resources, I'll give you the links, how things are implemented internally, and how this thing is really working out well, and you can take advantage of this thing. Okay, so just this one line where I defined integer as long int, and at the end I'll just undefine it. So that's a very bad way of using unsigned long. So I'm just lazy, I'm just being lazy here, and I'm just replacing this int with unsigned long. So that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, and with that, our implementation is done. Oh well, but before actually doing this, remember that we had initialized this ln_r with -1, right? So what we'll be doing is, actually we should not initialize it here. So we'll actually initialize this ln_r as -1 here, first thing. And second thing is, since we only need this long integer thing for our OK function, so I'll be just defining this thing here. Actually, ideally I should be using this hash as long and all those kind of stuffs, but this is just a hacky way to quickly make all the integers as long. Okay, so let's just try to run this code first. Oops, sorry, my bad. Okay, so did I miss out something in the hash part? Oh, okay, I didn't make it on the next line while explaining. Okay, so I just need to add this quantity. This quantity needs to be subtracted, and this quantity needs to be added. Okay, and this prime actually needs to get multiplied. So this is what our implementation was. Okay, so that's why I've just highlighted these 3 steps here. Let's just try to run it now. Okay, still something is missing, I guess. And what is that exactly? Oh, my bad. Really sorry for that. I think most of you might have spotted this thing already, but yeah, whatever. Let's just try to run it now. Okay, still not working. That's really embarrassing. So what I'm guessing is mostly because of this hacky thing. here are the for loops that gets affected. Okay, my bad. Since this is like greater than -1 and this might become -1, which is actually unsigned, so that might actually overflow. So we need to have integer here. Okay, so I'll just make it signed. Signed is nothing but integer, so I'll just make it that, and let's just try to see. Hopefully it should work now. Yeah, it's working. Let's just try to submit this now. And this gets accepted as well. That's a lot of relief actually, because yeah, this is actually a hacky step. But anyways, it does the work. If you want, you can explicitly define this hash and multiply as long. That's definitely a better practice. Should go with that. Again, to summarize, what all we have done is we have applied the binary search first on the length L. So this length L is the length of which the substring is going to be repeated. We just apply binary search on that. The logic is, if there is any substring of length L which gets repeated, all the substrings which is less than or equal to L length will also get repeated. So that is the case where you can apply binary search in the problems. Okay. Next thing is, so there is a lot of problem when you actually implement the ribbon carp in a naive way and you take the modulo and all those stuffs. So what we have done here is we have taken advantage of how numbers are represented internally, and that is why we are not taking modulo explicitly, but we are letting the internal implementation take modulo in a way that we are using unsigned long int, and that's actually a fairly large number as compared to the typical primes that are used in competitive coding, which is 10 to the power 9 plus 7, 10 to the power 9 plus 9, and so on, this kind of stuffs. So you get much lesser collisions in that scenario. Okay, so it becomes really a good way to implement in this way. So you're just taking advantage of the internal modulo that's happening because of the overflow. Okay, this here we just take the hash of the initial k characters, and after this is just a sliding window technique. So in these 3 steps we just make sure that whatever hash we had before, which is this, so from this we are able to get the hash of the next k characters. Okay, so that's all for now. I hope you would have learned something out of it. I personally have learned something really good out of this, especially this modulo overflowing thing. I really like this technique, to be very honest. Let me know if you have any confusion, or if you want me to make a separate tutorial on ribbon carp or binary search tutorial is already there. So I'll just put the description. I'll just put the link to the video in the description section. And if you want any other technique also, say ribbon carp or suffix tree, suffix try, or try in general, let me know in the comment section as well, and I'll be really happy to make videos on those things as well. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a nice day.